Hello and welcome to Technocracy. I'm Heena Goswami, editorial consultant with IGPP, Institute for Governance, Policies and Politics, New Delhi. On May 7th, India launched a targeted attack on terror bases operating in its neighbor's territory, from where India was being repeatedly attacked by terrorists. The latest of which, the Pahalgam attack on 22nd April, took the lives of 27 civilians at a tourist hotspot in Kashmir. To strike terror at its heart, the Indian forces launched Operation Sindoor in the early hours of May 7th. But what was supposed to be a precise and targeted operation against terror bases in Pakistan quickly escalated as Pakistan began attacking border areas in India and launched drone attacks on Indian cities, leading to retaliation by Indian forces. This escalation brought both the countries at the brink of a war before ceasefire was finally announced on 10th May. Needless to say that the period leading up to the ceasefire was a very tense and chaotic one. While grieving for justice for the loss of innocent lives at Pahalgam, millions of Indians were also praying for the safety of their loved ones at the border. And all turned to TV news and social media for getting news about the state of conflict and the damages caused. However, in this chaotic period, both social media and TV channels were rife with misinformation and disinformation, a lot of it unleashed by Pakistan as part of information warfare. Now, what is this information warfare? While there is no single agreed upon definition of information warfare, US Department of Defense defines information warfare as the integrated employment of IRC's information-related capabilities in concert with other lines of operation to influence, disrupt, corrupt, or usurp the decision-making of adversaries and potential adversaries while protecting our own. However, the US Air Force has a more human-centric approach to information warfare and defines it as military capabilities employed in and through information environment to deliberately affect adversary human and system behavior and preserve friendly freedom of action during cooperation, competition, and conflict. Simply put, information warfare entails an effort to gain an information advantage over the opponent. It consists in controlling one's own information space, protecting access to one's own information, while acquiring and using the opponent's information, destroying their information systems, and disrupting the information flow. It entails not just disrupting critical infrastructure, stealing sensitive data, or compromising system to gain an advantage, but also involves disseminating false or misleading information, disinformation, propaganda, and manipulating social media algorithms to amplify or suppress specific messages or opinions. Disinformation warfare was unleashed by our adversary Pakistan, who after an year-long ban restored Twitter on May 7th so as to open the floodgates of misinformation and set a favorable narrative. Certain sections of citizens, leaders, and even media fell prey to such tactics and shared unverified news. Some from Pakistani handles and even legacy media proved to be unreliable. Such was the state that the government agencies issued multiple advisories advising restraint, caution, and reminding of past incidents where sensationalization put lives at risk and banned multiple accounts. In Pakistan, the lead in this information warfare was taken by Director General of Inter-Services Public Relations, the Pakistani Army's media wing, which spread false anti-India narratives through manipulated content. Pakistani news channels like Dawn and Geo News supported this by showing misinformation as real, while troll farms spread lies and attack government statements online. What is notable is that Pakistan's efforts were aided by China and Turkey, who led coordinated media attacks and amplified anti-India narrative. The Chinese and Turkish state-run media outlets such as Global Times and TRT World echoed Pakistani narratives and presented Indian actions as provocative or aggressive. The information warfare has many downsides. From a purely militaristic perspective, misinformation may lead those who are in command to make tactical mistakes or influence their decisions. Among citizens, it may cause confusion and fear in already tense times, and on the diplomatic level, it may undermine the global image of a nation, leading to diplomatic challenges. India was able to counter the information warfare attacks through fact-checking networks, diplomatic engagement, and social media monitoring. Platforms like Disinfo actively exposed fake news and misleading narratives, while Indian authorities monitored and reported fake news accounts to social media platforms, leading to account suspensions. However, opening up of a new front in times of crisis only multiplies the burden, and we can only imagine that this would get worse with time. Also, this is not the first case of information warfare. Throughout the Russia-Ukraine conflict, social media served as a battleground for state and non-state actors to spread competing narratives about the war and portray the ongoing conflict in their own terms. It should also be kept in mind that information warfare is not limited to times of conflict. For example, during the COVID-19 pandemic, China was accused of engaging in a disinformation campaign aimed at undermining the efficacy of India-made vaccines and spreading misinformation about the origins of the virus. Such warfare may also be used in long or short term to subtly weaken the country from within or influence its citizens. This raises important questions. While the conflict has been contained for now, in times of crisis, how do we conduct ourselves on the internet so as to not fall prey to such campaigns, but act as responsible citizens whose duty is safeguarding fellow citizens and the nation's interest? Further, while still abiding by the principle of freedom of expression and internet as a fundamental right, how should the government control misinformation and disinformation? While India has remained dominant this time around, experts have cautioned that defensive measures are inadequate. A proactive strategy supported by policy, infrastructure, and public education is vital for informational sovereignty. To further understand what information warfare entails and its various facets, today we are joined by Mr. Kallol Bhattacherjee. Mr. Kallol Bhattacherjee is Senior Assistant Editor, Foreign Affairs with The Hindu and author of 3 critically acclaimed and bestseller books. He has over 20 years of experience on reporting extensively on South Asian affairs and about the conflicts in West Asia and North Africa.
So, what is this information warfare, a term that we have been repeatedly hearing during this recent escalation? Is it something that has recently come up with the advent of social media, or does it have a longer history?
So, information warfare is nothing new when it comes to state-to-state relation. What is, however, new is the way that information warfare is being used in the so-called social media platforms, which, as you can very well see, that these days information warfare is something that is even practiced at the level of the party politics in democracies, in the level of the different conventional and non-conventional interactions that civil society elements and political actors across the spectrum. Yeah, What is fascinating is that the state-to-state relation and the state-to-state information warfare we have seen the way back to, say, the First War and the Second World War. These state-to-state hostilities and state-to-state conflicts are also incorporating some of the social media practices that are part of, say, civil society or even political process in a democracy. Uh, this is also being used by, say, authoritarian countries, not necessarily this open democracy ethos and norms, but even they are using the uh, disinformation campaign. Disinformation and the misinformation campaign has been there for a very long time. We have been tactics and our history is full of such practices. But what is especially interesting is that now we are finding that state actors are also using these practices that we generally find at the level of domestic politics, at the level of media management, at the level of new media practices. So I think that is something that is unique, especially now that we are talking in the context of India-Pakistan hostility and the operations in the.
With presidents and prime ministers having like social media accounts, like a lot of news or policy announcement that comes to also does come Twitter playing a major role in setting the decisions. Uh, Please do tell us if in this information warfare game with Pakistan helped by the Chinese and Turkish media to mislead the world and set a favorable narrative for itself. And do you think India was effectively able to counter that propaganda?
Well, we have to first of all distinguish Chinese media from the Turkish media, and also we have to distinguish the Chinese media from Indian media. First of all, Indian media operates in a rather, I can say, the chaotic democratic context in which of which we are all very proud of. At the same time, the Chinese media operate in the context of one-party systems that they have in China. So therefore, there really cannot be, in real sense, any comparison between the Chinese media, especially since they are owned by the government of China, or rather, or they're supported by the government. Most of them are state-backed, or they speak for the Chinese government. And on the other hand, you have the Turkish media outlets. Now, Turkish media outlets have been conducting themselves with a lot of difficulties, especially because the Turkish government, or President Erdogan government, the AKP, AK party government, they have carried out systematic repression of the Turkish media outlets over the last more than a decade. So these media entities have been first of all dealing their domestic power structures. That is something we have to take. And this also they have been dealing for the last decade in case of say, China, and for the last, let's know, 1.5 of the Erdogan government. Having said that, we have to remember that the Turkish media outlets have been doing a very good job. In some ways, also controversial because they have to support their government when it comes to the conflict reporting in West Asia, because West Asia and especially Turkish neighborhood, Turkey's neighborhood is full of conflict. Syria, Iraq, Lebanon. So there, the Turkish media outlets have been doing a very good job because they, at least in whatever limited way, or they have been reporting those conflicts. So these media houses, especially the Turkish media houses, they have been doing good work. In comparison, I cannot really say that too much about the Chinese system because Chinese media houses, as I said initially, are limited in the scope that the Chinese political structure allows them. So there cannot be as much of comparison. But nevertheless, having said that about their fundamental nature, I would suggest that when it comes to disinformation and misinformation, they are part of the larger political discourse that unfolds within their political structure. The Turkish government of Erdogan refers to South Asia as Turkey's region. Now, that is somehow problematic from our point of view because we don't really consider South Asia to be a neighbor or a strategic backyard of Turkey. On the other hand, we are very well aware of Chinese investment, Chinese political ties, nuclear ties, and military to military ties with Pakistan. So these factors make it obvious that Turkish, as the move the Chinese media outlets, within their limited scope, will have their own particular narrative that they would like to build. Now, it is also clear that the narrative will not be serving the state interest of India. But these are also information providers when it comes to, say, consumers of media products, be it in India or in Turkey or in China or third countries like, say, Nepal or any other country where these channels, these outlets be available. I, for one, don't quite agree with the fact that these media houses should be limited or blocked, but then they should be viewed for the sake of understanding the narratives that Turkey and China would like to promote, even in the context of India-Pakistan conflict variety that we saw the last few days. And I think blocking them or perhaps to tell them to toe a particular line is also not quite okay because they have their own line. So as long as they don't really actively promote hate information or they not in a very aggressive way and in a sustained manner promote misinformation and promote or rather spread information that harmful for strategic interest of uh, the Indian state, I would say that they should be left understood. But in this particular case, we have seen, especially in case of, say, some of the strategic factors that are necessary for the state. I think the Chinese state outlets and the Turkish state outlets were a bit problematic. Not a bit, but perhaps very much problematic. And that is why we have heard from the policymakers and also people who are in the war room in the government of India. They have told by what they have been seeing in terms of not really an unbiased or objective reporting, but they were trying to promote a particularly anti-India kind of reporting. So I think therefore it was quite obvious that they were towing a line that was to their choice and to their advantage in this particular crisis, which favored one country, that's Pakistan. So yes, even if we do not like blocking channels because as media professionals, we believe in an open landscape, media landscape. There are strategic moments when the pause buttons were pressed by state actors, but I think it is their prerogative. But nevertheless, we have to keep open channels also.
Does make sense for the Chinese or the Turkish media to toe the line of their respective state. Thank you for shedding light on the fundamental nature of their medias. How about Indian media? I mean, I feel like whatever we may say about them, they towed the line and they towed the line, went ahead, turned it into some sort of fantasy. I mean, many people are criticizing Indian media for their irresponsible reporting and they were sensationalizing everything. Do you think they did more harm than good to India's strategic interest?
Yes, one word, especially for the chaotic nature of the Indian media landscape, we have to remember that just like dysfunctional, sometimes the Indian media also tends to be chaotic and noisy and wrong. But in this particular case, I would say the context was, and in a context, as I like to say, sometimes friends, that conflict, the enemy must perceive the other side as irrational, but your friend must find you rational. And I think some of the reporting, actually, the broadcast media, you saw, but that perhaps that series clips that India, yeah, or rather the media reports that were coming here or indicative that perhaps lead for the leading media channel probably were not being rational and the for friends of India because India has a lot of service at the international level, and I think they were surprised and shocked by some of the media reportage that came out at that time. So I think yes, you are right. It was a big spectacle, and it was not really catering information and correct information. Rather, it was contributing to some sort of a delusional reality which did not exist. And some sort of, while playing it, etc., that they were making did not really help in creating a positive attitude about India. So I would say in a complex situation, the role of the media becomes very and big for the voice that the media acquire in such moments it can be of a strategic nature. So I would say that yes, it was a moment that perhaps will stay with us for a long time, and it should make us ponder and make us contemplate and think about what really went wrong with the broadcast media during such a critical time. And I hope can team team of the Ministry of External Affairs has gone to New York carrying the folder on terrorism that emanates from Pakistan. So all these reports and all these bilateral, United Nations and other such platforms will require a lot of rational analysis and not high decibel media drama. So therefore, I hope that sort of moderation and that's a reality check will be practiced the responsible media households and seasoned journalists in the near future.
My next question is rather naive, and why do better perception? And in this time and age when you have satellite images or simply call up people, and I'm sure at top level the military officials are in communication with each other, not just in within the nation, but with officials from other countries as well, and it is rather easy to uncover the truth, at least for them. So how does it matter if a civilian who is away, let's say in Madhya Pradesh, or not Rajasthan, but I mean far-flung areas, uh, you know, how does it matter how they perceive the conflict, or like in the moments of crisis? Do you think that perception, even amongst citizens, is of certain importance?
Certainly, because when state crash, they do not crash with their own money. Wars are fought with public money. And if people's money are used, if your money, my money, the common passes back, you know, uh, that state resources are being utilized, then as part of a democracy, every single individual has, theoretically speaking at least, the right to know what really is transpiring in the battlefield. And I would only say, with example from our classic, that is Mahabharata, where Dhritarashtra was basically blind, and he obviously could not go to the battlefield of Mahabharata. But then such was Dhritarashtra's curiosity, because he was, of course, not the most important character in the drama, but even he wanted to know what really was transpiring in the battlefield, and therefore he turned to one of his, fourth person, Sanjay, and he asked him to narrate, tell me the story of the battlefield. And that is how the so-called the idea of live telecast we we refer to. So I would say that it is always important for the common people. Common people are the foundations, are the foundation providers for state system, and we must remember that wars at the level of state to state wars are fought with public money, and public money means public interest, and therefore everyone has the right to know what really is happening. And having said that, I would say that therefore perception is extremely important because we are talking about a state level clash. We're not talking about clashes between, say, billionaires holding armies or billionaires or other people. That sort of non government clashing, right? We talk about one state, um, and this sort of scale of balance perception patterns are not just, of course, as I said, for common people, but also certainly for the states because they are the primary stakeholder. And states have something called legitimacy. And if states lose the battle of perception, then the states will also end up with reduced legitimacy and reduction in legitimacy of the state, especially in today's time and age, where, as you mentioned, social media issues will simply not be, a healthy development for a state's future. Because if a state loses legitimacy, if its status is reduced after a conflict or during a conflict, which which comes across as really visible player in a battlefield scenario, then it really does not serve the purpose of amplifying the power and might of the state. Because as a state, we all know theoretically, the goal of a modern state is to expand and enhance its power because it is after a structure of power. And if the structure of power diminishes its legitimacy, then that's a very dangerous development because very often we have seen that great deal of violence, as in case of say the Soviet Union, it led to a diminution and diminishing legitimacy at